Sometimes there is this capacity in us to forget things. When I had my heart surgery, I would say to myself, I'm never going to go near sugar, fatty foods. I'm always going to exercise, go for walks every day. And I've done the best I could. But there are moments where you just forget and you find yourself swimming in eclairs and chocolate cakes. And even though there is this force inside that says, go for a walk, you say, no, it's okay, I'll survive. And so one of the ways to combat forgetfulness is by creating various expressions, having pictures around, even though at a certain point, even those pictures, those forms of expression will lose their power over you. Once something becomes watered down, you have your mom, you don't appreciate her, she dies. You go into the state of mourning, where you're just grieving every single day. And as a way to cope with the sadness or the sorrow, you go to a tattoo shop and you have someone stamp a tattoo on your shoulder. And the assumption is that every day where you shower and you look at your bicep and there is the image of your mom, you kind of remember her and you become thankful, or you become, I suppose, depressed for all the ways that you disappointed yourself, you disappointed your mom. But after a while, even that is forgotten. And I think, again, all forms of expression to some extent. Are you familiar with Rasputin? So what you have is this Siberian kind of peasant. And from some of the tales that have come from that particular space, he had these miraculous magical powers, that you point a gun at him and you shoot him and nothing. And eventually, because he had said some nasty things about the people in power, and knowing that this guy can't just be killed in an ordinary way, they just dismembered him, kind of like the Titans. And he would go into these frenzies once in a while, these dancing moves. And he would choose for himself specific companions. And the point I suppose I'm trying to make is, let's just say I am into dancing or some sort of an art form, and I read his story and I'm inspired with the story. And what inspiration does is that it really removes you from your flesh. You kind of just like walk in the clouds for a while, and then you come down. And when you come down with the memory of the experience, and you say, I read this book about Carlos Castaneda, or I read this book about Irina Tweedy, and I don't want to forget. And so, despite the fact that now that you've come down, you now live in the world of conflict, you don't want to hang out with your friends, and you don't want to go to parties and, just dance, your friends do ridiculously. You want to follow the footsteps of Rasputin, or some tradition we call Kailistes in northeast Russia or somewhere, where there are rituals and their function is to make sure that you are removed from your flesh. You have an experience that when you come down, it's very difficult to forget, and it contaminates you for the rest of your life. It's like you're married to someone for 20, 30, 40 years and they die. And nobody wants to be alone in life, and you go on these dating apps and you go out with these people and you realize they all suck. In some shape or form, you'd rather have your spouse back, but that's not possible. So you say, what, I'm just going to remain a monk for the rest of my life. And so one of the ways that you say, I'm going to fend off forgetfulness and I'm going to kind of inspire the conflict even more by trying to remember that experience is by creating an image, however you want to do it. Some people do tattoos, some people paint. It connects you to something. And I think deep down there is this desire inside all of us for, I don't know, I turn on the TV once in a while and I want to be touched by, lack of a better word, beauty, whether it comes in the form of Al Pacino or Robert De Niro or something. I just, don't want to just sit there and be connected to my flesh once in a while. I want to have an inspired moment where I walk away from the living room and I don't want to talk to my wife, or I don't want to look at my kids. I just want to have those special moments. And eventually, of course, I'll be dropped back into my physical life, regular life. And once my wife says, take out the trash, it's finished. I'm back down here, taking out trash and vacuuming and washing dishes. And I think all of us have this desperate need for an experience of something that transcends just the everyday tables and chairs of life. Life in Oakland makes me all meat and no spirit. Just looking at my wife in Oakland makes me more meat. And I want to go somewhere. And I want to be touched by something that this culture doesn't have. I think we are all pursuing that. And I think the deeper the object of your worship, the more substance it has, the more you're going to be pursuing this carrot and the stick. You know, if you're only after sex, for example, well, it's nothing bad. There's nothing wrong with it. It does create a good amount of emotions. And since you're only 18 or 19 or 20 and you're just stupid, not because it's innate, it's just lack of experience. By the time you figure out the conflicts, which are never going to be resolved really, 2 or 3 years of your life have passed by. And so there comes a point where you go into hibernation, you come out and say, I want something that's just more than sex. Then you say, I want something that is sex, but also meaning. And it becomes a bit more complicated. Then you say sex, meaning, and like a bona fide relationship, and then a family. And then there comes a point where you say, you know what, I've had all of those. I want to go into a retirement period. I've spent a good amount of time and energy with my wife, with my kids, with my own, life. I want something different. And none of us really know what it is. All we know is that once in a while, we just want to be touched by something. And it can come in all sorts of different ways. I mean, I don't go and watch a Warriors game because I find all 50 people on the court interesting. I just go for Stephen Curry. One single guy has the power to elevate this thing we call basketball. I don't know how he does it. I don't know why I'm attracted to him and not the other players. I mean, that's the magic a mystery that I can't even touch. I don't know what happens. I don't know why I am moved by his smile, by his eyes, by his physical body, by the way he plays basketball. It's just magical. I think if you want to kind of just reduce the human being to a very simple definition, is an entity that runs after beauty and finds it in all forms and shapes and colors. There was a time where the 4 Gospels really moved me. They were interesting. But then the Gospel of Judas, that was even more interesting. As you grow and mature and change, the things you begin to want to worship begin to change. For those of us who are parents, which is really a very, very sad experience, for those of us who are parents, we soon come to realize that kids demand autonomy and individuality at such a young age. At the age of 2, they want to feed themselves, clothe themselves, bathe themselves, run the streets by themselves. And you come to realize, well, there is nothing wrong with being creative, and there is nothing wrong with being an individual, and there's nothing wrong with being autonomous. It's just a wrong stage for that. And so our last resort, after a good amount of reasoning with our children, calmly, sometimes scream, then comes the hand. Spare the rod, spoil the child. You slap them, you kick them, you punch them, you beat the crap out of them, hoping that, well, they're just not going to run on the street, And so we make sure that they remain codependent. And there is nothing wrong with that. Because as a parent, you know that codependency is good. One of the things that we do as human beings, we're like this amazing copy machines. And you just hope that you copy the good things. And you hope, at least this used to be the case for the longest time in human history, the first people you copy are your parents. And then, of course, your relatives, and then, down the line. And so that particular codependency is really, 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 really good. And then there comes a point where parents allow you to kind of experiment with things on your own. They realize, like, your daughter comes in and says, I want to make a cake. Fine, you know where the eggs are, you know where the blender is, knock yourself out. And the entire kitchen is a mess. But at least you know that they're not going to put their head in the blender, that they're not going to stab themselves with a knife. And so I think when it comes to like crafts, like art, one of the, I think, illusions that we have about ourselves is the following. If you want to learn how to play the piano, you will still learn that you need someone who's been there, who's done that. That this person will sit you down and go through the steps with you for the next 5, 6, 7 years until you learn how to play the piano. If you want to learn how to draw, there's a teacher for that. Whatever it is that you want to do, that is an expression of some creativity out there, there is a teacher for it. I think the illusion that we have is thinking requires no teachers. Life requires no teachers. You can actually wing it. Just do whatever, and eventually you'll get to the destination. And the truth is that's not the case. You can wing it. And if the Greeks are right, that the goddess Fortuna will eventually come down and says, you know what, I like Ashley. She's a complete mess. She's a moron, but I think it's time for her to kind of just grow up a little bit. And so events begin to happen in your life, and little by little you're trained to think well, to feel well, to be able to observe and pay attention to the right things at the right time, for the right reasons. But most of us, I think, it's like, you have someone graduating at the age of 18, and the world is a big, advertisement machine, and you have a friend who's a hippie, who's a loser. You say, you know what, I want to be like that. And your parents keep telling you, your friend is no good, don't be like that. You say, Mom, Dad, I'm an American, I'm 18. You talk to me one more time in that way, I will call the cops on you. And what do the poor parents do in this culture? Nothing. They'll back off and you'll just go out. And you'll kind of waste your life for the next, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And one of the ways that we justify waste is by saying, well, if it wasn't for all those things I experienced, I wouldn't be the person I am. It's very true. You're just 90, paralyzed, incompetent. You're completely just useless. And the only thing you really have is a bucket filled with regret. You have an inspired moment where you say, I am really wise because of all the mistakes I made. That may be so, but you're still incompetent. You're just nothing but a bumper sticker. And so, time passes, you find yourself back in school at the age of like 25 or 30 or 40 or 50. Nothing wrong with that. But I think, as T.S. Eliot would say, as you will read in Ecclesiastes, that, there is a season for everything. There's nothing wrong with coming back to school at the age of 90. It just, mentally, you just don't have the capacity. Emotionally, you're kind of worn out. Physically, it's difficult to sit there for like 5 hours, listen to some idiot like me. I mean, look, if I was to use my own story, I would tell you the following. For whatever the reasons are, my brother, he was just disciplined. He's a number 5 in the Enneagram, kind of is on autopilot. We were in India at the age of like 11, he would light candles and study. And I would look at him like at 2 in the morning, what the hell is this kid doing? Is he stupid? It's 2, just sleep, man, have a good time. But no. And to this day, he's the same way. I, on the other hand, complete loser. I still am. Anything that requires discipline, I just run away from. And so at the age of 18 or 19, I just ran into this man with a bushy mustache, and he had a very brute force to him. Little by little, I grew to like him. And what little desires I had about tennis, about soccer, about chess, about music, they all disappeared. He consumed every space I had within me. I just fell in love with him. And he asked me, what are you doing? I'm playing tennis. Quit, go to school. Okay. And little by little he took control over my entire life. And for the next 10 years. And then I realized, I like doing philosophy. I never thought about coming into the classroom and teaching. But I always tell my parents, if it wasn't for Hussein, I would have probably ended up in prison because I like to steal things. I still do when no one's looking. And when I think back and I pay attention to all the steps that I took, I realized it was really good for me at the age of 18 to have no independence, to be completely dependent on another human being who had richer life experiences, and for me to be attracted to those type of experiences. It allowed me to be more focused about school, to hang out with losers less, give up music, give up soccer, give up tennis, give up everything. Just sit in my room and read and read and read and read. And stay single till I was like 80. And because of, I suppose, him and my codependency on him, we walked into the classroom and it was a shot in the dark. You have no idea if it's going to be good or bad, if students are going to like you or despise you. It seemed that, the way I was, my temperament, my way of expressing ideas was something that the students kind of liked, enjoyed. 10, 2 enjoyed philosophy and humanities, majored, and now teach. So is individuality good? It depends at what stage. I don't like to read books anymore. I don't find ideas interesting. I like to be inspired so ideas can ooze out of me. But I don't like to be a plagiarist of ideas. That stage for me is past. Are there going to be moments where I find myself in this desert where I am not inspired to generate ideas? I'm not inspired to have emotions that inspire me and generate thoughts? Yeah. Do I desperately look for a book to read or an audio to listen to be inspired? Absolutely. Can I find them? No. Do I get sad and depressed? Yeah. Do I become sometimes angry? Yeah. Do I want codependency? Do I sometimes wish I didn't have a teacher at the age of 18, so maybe now I could go on a quest to look for a teacher who can inspire me? Yeah. It's a fantasy. I can no longer have those things because I'm way too contaminated at this age and my experiences. Being an individual, if you go to the dictionary and look up the word, it means indivisible. It's a whole unit. It's unfragmented. It cannot be broken into 10, 20 different pieces. It's one whole piece. And it means, if you go back to some of the conversations we've had, it means that your body and your emotions and your thoughts, as well as your spirit, if there is anything like that, they all come together, join forces. If you look at the book of Job in the Old Testament, it says, "In my house you will find many mansions." And it's a very strange statement, because you oftentimes find houses in mansions, not the other way around. And yet in this particular book, the phrasing is very interesting, that you can actually find mansions in houses, or in a house. So if you go back to some of the things we wrote on the board, that there is this place inside you called the iron, that's about immediate pleasures that you want, and you want them to be gratified. Then you have the power pleasure, then you have the relationship pleasures, then you have the intellect. At a certain point, for you to become an individual. Now, the way it usually works for us is that I want to talk about Plato's idea of, say, the cave, for example, or his idea about epistemology or knowledge. What is knowledge? How is it different from opinion? But my emotions tell me, today, just wing it, be free. Forget the curriculum for a moment. Forget if a student is going to complain and go to the dean. Just go with the feelings. And what you have is the intellect now fights with my emotions. An individual says, you know what my mind wants is what my emotions want. And what my mind and emotions want are in fact what my spirit wants. And I'm going to take my body to where my emotions, my spirit, and my intellect desire. And what you now have is a unified human being who comes to class. And now physically I am embodied, emotionally I'm embodied, intellectually I'm embodied, and I'm also guided by my soul or spirit, if there is again such a thing. Now that becomes an individual. The way we are is, I am with my wife, but I'm thinking about Angelina Jolie. I'm talking with my colleague about curriculum development, and there's a part of me that says this is a complete waste of time. I am here, but I'm thinking about retirement. And so you realize that you're just all over the place. And it really does take a long, long time. We're kind of like magnifying glasses, in the sense that if you really want to apply a good amount of heat towards one single object, you have to kind of hold the magnifying glass in a particular way, that all the forces that you're trying to harness in this glass, just one pointed, a single point at a single thing, and then smoke will come out. If the forces are just all over the place, nothing is going to happen. And I think we are very much the same way. That because of variety of conflicting desires inside us, because of our inability to think coherently, and most importantly, because there is no passion inside us. And I think you can just reduce everything to that. We don't really love anything. We like a lot of things. We want a lot of things, but our want has no need in it. And the moment a want turns into a need, you're in trouble. Because a good amount of things that are out there trying to tempt you, this need is kind of like getting pregnant. You have almost 500,000 sperms going towards the egg, and it's the egg that's pulling the sperms. And once the egg captures the sperm that she likes, the gates close. The rest of the sperms, they just end up in hell. And I think that's what passion and love does. And if you happen to slowly find yourself becoming codependent, that you like something, and that like has turned into a want, and that want has turned into a need, you soon come to realize you're less interested in other things. And that could be devastating for those of us who have other areas of life that needs tending to. I mean, you're in a relationship. Imagine if you began to like someone. Jeez, that'd be awful. Imagine if you began to like them even more. Then you would probably just sabotage your relationship, which is not a bad thing after all. Yeah, no one can be an individual. It's not possible. You need someone from the outside.